Do you think that there is, as you call it, a victim mentality? But I also think that we're just not, I know for sure we're not invested in. For example, I'm an adult, I'm 27. When I go to the doctor, my doctors they never ask me, what career do you have? Do you have any kids? Do you have a wife? They don't ask me the traditional 27-year-old man that doesn't have a disability, right? So, because that conversation is not had with, let's say, newly disabled or stroke patients or whatever it might be, they think it's not possible because that conversation is not had.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new installment of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I'm your host, Nick Comstock. You guys, thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday for this episode. We are going to have a great time. We have a guest that is returning for his second appearance. So now I consider this guy a friend to the show, and he's become a personal friend to me. We'll get to him in just a second. But right now, I want to do a couple show notes. As you guys should be aware by now, I have the privilege to be a co-author of a book, and came right out at the end of April called Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. And I am chapter 5, Breaking the Mold. So I really want to encourage you to read that book. 12 authors talk about our lack of employment and what our entrepreneurial journeys are and what we've had to do to get where we currently are and what our dreams are. And we've had, I believe, as of this recording, 2 great press releases. We are working on an audio version. Hopefully, I'll have some news for you guys on that soon. So make sure you pick up your copy. You can get it on your Amazon Kindle device. Even if you don't have a Kindle, you can download the Kindle app on your phone and get it that way, or you can get it in paperback. So again, the book is called Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. Get it now. It's number 1 in a couple different categories. I believe it will inspire a bunch of people. So make sure you pick up that book. Also, guys, I mentioned this last week in the show, the last couple weeks actually, talking to you about the need for financial support to continue bringing awesome guests and awesome content to you via this YouTube channel and via Apple Podcast and Spotify. You say, Nick, but these services are free. Yes, they are, but my podcast producer is not. And in order to continue bringing you great programs and great disabled voices in America, I need to be able to pay for that. So if you would do me such a favor and could donate like $5 or $10 to my GoFundMe account, this will not only help pay for my podcasting services, but this will help contribute to a handicap accessible van and my other future public speaking endeavors. Thank God for an editor. This will help with my other public speaking endeavors. So if you can help me in any way, shape, or form, please donate $5, $10, $20 to my GoFundMe account. I would forever appreciate it, and I appreciate all of your guys' support. Remember the GoFundMe account and the book, Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. Now to my guest. You guys, he's been here before. He was one of the highest rated episodes we've ever had. I've had his mom on here in recent weeks. They are both rock stars, and I'm so glad to have my good friend Phillip Bramwell back on the show. Phillip, welcome back to the program. I'm so happy to see you.
It's good to be here, Nick. Thanks for the invite. And audience, thank you for tuning in. It's always good to have people interested in hearing what we have to say. So greatly appreciate you guys as well.
Yeah, Phil, I mean, our episode together really took off. I think it got about 60 views when it first aired, and I don't know how it's doing now, but this episode is gonna do even better. And the last time we were here, we talked about DEI, we talked about employment, we talked about dating as a person with a disability. We talked about all kinds of things. And I reached out to you because I was like, I need a guest and we need to talk about some things that are happening in America with Medicaid that a bunch of disabled people are freaking out, which you and I honestly think they shouldn't freak out for no reason. But I'm going to be honest with you. I even called you yesterday because I saw an article and I saw another disabled advocate friend of mine who leans on the conservative side, and when I saw his post and he said these cuts to Medicaid are not good, I thought, and so I started having some major anxiety. But then I picked up the phone and called you, and you really did some real talk for me. And you basically said, Nick, it's bullshit. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So why don't we just jump into things, man? What are your thoughts on the disabled community going haywire since the administration has come into office?
Um, well, to start, I want to say that it's valid to be concerned in a general sense, just because as a disabled person, our healthcare needs are complex and our healthcare needs are expensive. So, from that perspective, it's valid to be concerned no matter who's in office, no matter which party it is, and so on. But in terms of these Medicaid cuts that are coming, I believe that for the genuinely disabled community, especially those of us that were born like this, I have quadriplegic, spastic cerebral palsy. I'm impaired in 4 limbs, and I'm in a manual wheelchair full time. I can't walk at all, and if I don't have any balance, if I fall on the floor, I'm not able to get myself off the floor. So that's pretty disabled. If you ask me. And I qualify for medical services such as attendant care, 40 hours a week, and I'm not able to dress myself independently. I need help with grooming. Like, I look pretty good right now, but that's only because another person, my attendant care employee, his name is Luke, a very solid guy, helps me out. People like that, they keep us alive, keep us safe, and keep us functional to participate in society.
Yeah, they really do. I'm fortunate, just like you are, to have an incredible care team. Um, I want to go back and ask you because you said something that was pertinent just now, and you only receive uh 40 hours a week of care. Do you feel that you really need 24 hours, or are you satisfied with the 40 hours? And why can't you get 24 hours if you need the 24-hour care?
Um, for now, as a 20-something-year-old man, I'm satisfied with my 40 hours. I mean, as I age, I'm sure things, can change. Um, but I'm satisfied with my 40 hours. I think if you're, um, excuse me if someone doesn't like this word, but if you're severe enough where you do need 24 hours of care, that should be available to you. But I feel, for my current health level and my functionality, that 40 is good enough.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel like you could be more active if you had 24-hour care, or do you feel like that wouldn't change?
The main benefit I would have if I had more attendant care is I'd be able to take a shower more than once a day. I mean, I live in Arizona, and in the summers, it literally gets to 115 degrees here, so it gets very hot very quickly. So sometimes I'd like to take more than one shower if I could, but being that I only have attendant care once a day, it's not really an option for me. I mean, I can give myself a bird bath, if I need to, but it's not equivalent to a regular shower. But as as a disabled person, we just do what we can and what's available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not offended by what you said at all. You said the word severe and you said you didn't want to offend people. I'm not offended by what you said at all. I wouldn't consider myself more severe, but there's just a lot of things that I need more help on. Brief changes, cooking meals, showers every day. I take a shower once a day too, which before I had my awesome care team that I have now, I was not able to do. I was doing sponge baths. And so sponge bath. Yeah. And it's just been so great. I think a lot of able bodied people take it for granted that, they can hop in the shower anytime they want and not have to worry about, you know, being cared for or waiting on someone to do it. I really consider a shower such a big blessing in my life, even though it's a small thing to most people. And so I just need to say that. So let's get back into talking about the recent big beautiful bill and these Medicaid cuts. Yes, disabled people do have a right to be concerned about their services, but to be honest with you, I think most of the cuts that they're considering cutting are or they're going to cut because now the bill has passed both House and the Senate. The Medicaid cuts that they are going to cut are most of the waste and the fraud. I do not think it's going to have an effect on the people who are legitimate, the people who need services. And I think people who are telling you that are number one, they're trying to get your vote. And even some on the right are saying this, I think, for fear mongering or whatever the reason. What do you say about that?
Uh, Well, just to start, I believe Medicaid cuts are a bipartisan issue. Not really I mean, certain people in politics make it seem like it's Democrat versus Republican, but really the concept of Medicaid cuts are not Democrat or Republican. It's simply government philosophy versus the philosophy of the people. And sometimes those philosophies don't align, even though in theory they're supposed to, because we did the voting. Sometimes we don't get the results that we voted for, if you will.
Right, right. So what do you say to disabled people that are told by people that are providing them services, if they cut your Medicaid, I won't be able to take care of you anymore, or you won't be able to have your services what you're used to having. Do you really think that that is going to happen? I mean, let's just be honest and have a real conversation about it.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. First of all, about the funding source for how your caregivers get paid. Let's even just say for a moment that, okay, Medicaid is cut. That doesn't mean that you'll lose your service provider. It just means that the payment source of the company that you use, it will be a different entity. Now the question becomes, Phil, what is that entity going to be? At the moment, we don't know what it's going to be, but it's not going to be completely nothing. I'll say that. And the other aspect I want to say is just in the field of caregiving, there's a lot of turnover for various reasons. So people choose to withdraw from their shift and get another job, you know, that's all power to them. It's everybody's right to get a job, get a different job
Mhm.
whether it be for more money or whatever the reason is, they don't owe anyone an explanation. So there's always instability. When you require a caregiver like we do, there's always going to be an element of instability, or is this person going to show up and things of that nature. But it's important not to let that damage your mental health or state of being, because that's going to be an ongoing issue for the rest of your life. Because I assume if you're watching this, you might need a caregiver. So that's a never ending cycle. So you can't let your mental health be decided on whether your caregiver gets another job, whether they're, 5 minutes late, things like that. We're working with people, and people are flawed in various ways, just like we are. So
Mhm.
we kind of have to roll with the punches and give people grace as long as it's within reason.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say too, a lot of caregivers leave because they say there's not enough money into it. And I will say that that's frustrating to me. I do agree that caregivers need a living wage, and here in Ohio, it's 18.25, I do believe. 18.25 an hour right now. I don't know if the pay is going to stay the same or go up once our new budget is in play on July 1st here in Ohio. But what I want to say is that a lot of people that are in this field complain about lack of money, but some of those same people, they have a stable job 7 days a week in the caregiving field, but then they call off 3 days out of seven, and then you turn around and you're like, I don't have enough money. Caregiving doesn't make enough. Well, those 3 days that you took off just took a chunk out of your paycheck. So show up to work. I mean, I understand things happen, but geez, you're not going to get paid if you don't show up to work. And if you're making little money as you say you are, the last thing I'm going to do is, and I don't make that much money anyway. I'm going to show up to work so that I can get my not much money, as much of it as I can. You know what I mean? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't I don't think too hard about it, because people are always gonna have their own difficulties within their own life and their own different situations. I mean, since I've had caregivers since I was 18 and now I'm 27. So
Yeah.
just within 9 years, I've had probably I'm not kidding. I've had 30 plus caregivers. And so everyone within those 30 caregivers, they've had their pros, their things I enjoyed about them, things I felt were a flaw, but I'm sure they had the same feeling about me. So it's just the nature of dealing with people. So I just try not to, think too hard about it, because I'm gonna need caregivers the rest of my life. So I'm sure there's gonna be lots of instability, ups and downs. So such is life.
Yeah. Phil, I really love your attitude. You've really helped me out a lot, just saying, and I'm older than you are, but we can learn from anybody. And one of the things that I started to really learn from you is that, such is life. Let the chips fall where they may. Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and deny life sucks, but it is what it is. And I really appreciate that attitude from you because it just helps me so much. Like, Nick, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. It could be worse. You could be stuck in bed today without a caregiver, but you're not. So, take a breath. And I really appreciate that side of life from you. I want to talk about something because you mentioned to me this yesterday on the phone, and this is the reason that we honestly need Medicaid cuts in America, because there are 30% of people in this country that you told me, and we'll say allegedly for this purpose, unless you have real facts, but I don't want to get in trouble. But you said 30% of people in this country or on Medicaid, and I would believe you because we did the Medicaid expansion several years ago, and that messed a lot of things up. Let's talk about your opinion about that for a little bit.
Well, I don't want to explicitly judge without knowing anyone's situation who deserves Medicaid or doesn't deserve Medicaid. But what I will say is that I'm on Medicaid. They cover my attendant care services, but I do have to pay for part of it. I have a $35 premium every month. Um, and so I imagine that 35 premium, it's not definitely not going away, and I imagine it could go up at any time. So my caregiving is definitely not free, but each time, Medicaid checks in on me every 3 months, which they require, they ask me, oh, do I need any services or any assistance with this, and that? Of course, I always give them the same list, and it's never, they always say the same answer. Oh, it's not covered. So like the issue with Medicaid, well, one of the concepts to consider with Medicaid cuts is, yeah, some things do need to be cut because there's money to help disabled people and others that may qualify for Medicaid, but the money that's there, it gets caught up somewhere, it gets lost, and it doesn't get used in the way that is most beneficial to American citizens.
Yeah, it does not. And Phil, I want to talk to you about that because you say you get notified every 3 months that Medicaid checks in on you. Is that from the state or the federal level? Because there are two different programs. There's state Medicaid and there's federal Medicaid.
So it's on the state level. I live in Arizona. I used to live in New Jersey. That's where I grew up from childhood. Um, and yeah, I was on Medicaid there, but each state has their own, even though we live in the United States of America, each state has their own Medicaid rules, their own restrictions. And so that's a debatable system as well. Why is every state different? Why are some states better or worse? I wouldn't say any state's Medicaid is good in particular, but some states are a lot worse than others.
Yeah. So, do you think, and maybe it's just more of a headache for you, do you think if you went to the state of Arizona and you appealed some of their decisions about, what services they think you don't need and what services you really do need, do you think if you were to fight a little bit for that, that the state of Arizona would take a look and say, okay, he really does need it? Or is, do you think that's too much of a headache?
Yes, I think that would work if I did that. I actually did that in New Jersey. I had a court hearing and everything. It didn't work. I think one of the reasons why it doesn't work, why right now the way things are, it doesn't work to do that type of thing, is because it's individuals saying, I need a gym membership paid for. I need a stretching paid for. It's one I'm one person. I'm a speck of dust. In the scheme of things, I'm a speck of dust in the universe. So what we really need is I need 500 disabled people to say that they need their gym membership paid for, which I can actually find 500 people because where I live, there's a lot of disabled people um, that need their gym membership paid for, and then we could start making progress. But right now, everything is kind of separated where, you know, they, one of the tactics that people use against us when we advocate for ourselves is that, oh, you're the only one complaining, which is not true, but that's the isolating factor that they use. So we need to become more united within our community, and it starts by not giving in to the fear mongering of, oh, your Medicaid is going to get cut. That's just causing division within our own community, and we need to be more united.
Yeah, and you know what? You said something interesting. About Medicaid paying for gym memberships or not paying for it. That's interesting, and that would be something that I think Medicaid should pay for, because we have physical therapists telling us all the time, we need to work out, we need to work out, we need to do this, we need to do that. And a lot of times it's really hard for us to do that on our own. So if we were able to get, you know, physical trainers paid for, or a gym membership with accessible equipment, and with the accessible equipment to get on the equipment, that would be amazing, because a lot of Medicaid will not pay for physical therapy. And I know this personally from my experience. Medicaid will not pay for physical therapy because they say that it's just maintenance. So by a certain number of time, they'll pay for like 6 sessions. But if I'm not, you know, up out of my chair doing somersaults, to give a wild example, they're not going to pay for it anymore because they say it's just maintenance. But a lot of times, that's what we as physical disabled people need, is maintenance on our body. So, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's an ongoing issue. That's one of the differences between I've noticed about being an adult with a disability versus when I was a child. But honestly, when I was a child, most of my therapy was not covered by insurance. I was just fortunate that my parents both had incomes, and I also had other family members that chipped in. So my parents paid for a lot of treatment, but you know, even when I was a kid, I'm sure people were wondering, Philip must have really good insurance. I didn't have it wasn't about I had good insurance. I had the same shit that everyone else had. But the thing is that if insurance didn't cover it, my parents were able to. So I'm just fortunate that they chose to invest in me in that particular regard.
Right. I couldn't really get any help from the government until I was 18 years of age, because they said, quote, my parents, my dad in particular, made too much money. We were too rich because my dad made too much money. And then my mom later, she started cleaning banks and houses and different things. And so I couldn't even get Medicaid or anything. We did have a service. I don't know if it's around anymore. If it is, it may be called a different name. But we had a service called Crippled Children's, and they paid for, I believe, a lot of my therapy and a lot of my medical equipment. And we did have, my parents did have really good insurance back in the 90s. And we were able to pay for a lot of my therapy and a lot of my medical equipment. When I started to become a teenager, is when insurances and things started changing. I aged out of what they called crippled children. So that's when we really started to struggle. And then when I became 18, that's when Medicaid and things started to pop in, and we couldn't get a lot of services. Indiana Medicaid was very meager as far as the services that they would provide, which is one of the reasons we moved here to Ohio, and now I have the life that I have today. Yes, there could be some major improvements, but I wouldn't have the life that I had today if it were not for being in Ohio. But I have to say this too, we have to get rid of this idea that people with disabilities have to stay on the shoestring of the federal government in order to have a successful life, because I just think that's not true. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, the government is not interested in making our life as a disabled people more comfortable or better or whatever word you want to
Absolutely.
use. So if we just start with that aspect, that mandates if you feel like you deserve a good life, that means you have to really invest in yourself and have that inner will inside you to make your life what you want it to be. You know, the way, so I'm unemployed right now. I'm on unemployment, like the regular people, like unemployment. And I'm looking for a job. And, you know, the vision that I see for myself is, you know, I always desired to have, you know, a long-term partnership with a woman, maybe a family, maybe a dog, you know, but I but I'm smart enough to realize that if I'm broke, that's not going to happen because the reality of life is that, you know, if you want to raise a family, you need money to do that. And disabled people, you know, we're severely underemployed or unemployed, and we struggle with relationships as a result of that because people see that we're not stable, and so we're not always the choice. Not I wouldn't even say the number one choice. We're not even on the list of
Even
candidates
considered. Yeah.
sometimes for long-term stability relationships just because our stability is not where it needs to be. But that takes our responsibility to make that happen and not worry about the fear mongering and the rhetoric about, oh, this is going to get cut. Food stamps are going to get cut. You don't need food stamps. You need a job that pays pretty good money. That way you could pay for your own groceries. The same applies to me as well. I'm not preaching to anybody. This is the same philosophy that I think of with myself as well.
What about people out there, Phil, who say, you know, that's great, but I can't get a job because Voc Rehab they don't think I'm employable. Or I had somebody tell me personally, I was on the phone with a friend of mine who lives in Kansas, and he was telling me some of his issues. And they have all these loops that they make you go through at Voc Rehab. And they told my friend, they said, we don't think you're ready for a job. Well, who makes that decision? Like, nobody with a disability, without a disability, goes into a job and has to jump through all these hoops, and they're not told, we don't think you're ready for a job. They may say, oh, we don't think you're right for this position, so we're not gonna hire you. But as far as ready to work in general, nobody says, oh, well, we just looked you over and we think you're not ready for a job, period. Which is why, I mean, I've been through several vocational rehabs. Here they call it Ohioans with Opportunities with Disabilities. And I'm not afraid to call them out, which is why uh, 12 authors and myself got together and said, we need to have this book written and we need to say our stories. Because me personally, I was told, quote, Nick, I'm looking at you in the world of work and I see nothing that you can offer an employer. So there you go. This is why I'm here today, pulling myself up by my bootstraps. But what do you say to people? Yeah, Phil, it's great that we need to get our money and pay our own groceries, but what do we do when nobody will hire us? What do you say to those people?
Well, first I want to empathize with you. You know, I struggle with making money myself. Notice I don't say I struggle with employment because struggle with employment means that you don't have work. I have plenty of work to do. I have plenty of things that I do. It's just a struggle to get paid for them, right? So we have
Mm.
we have to learn to distinguish our verbiage. Not that we struggle with work, we struggle to get paid for work. So relying on vocational rehab to find a job, clearly it's not good for most of us. I have my own experience, some experience with that. Maybe we could get into it, but anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that all these people have trouble with vocational rehab and getting them a job, especially when you have a physical disability. They really don't know what to do because usually they get used to putting people in grocery stores or working in factories and physical nature jobs. Nothing wrong with those jobs. Those are very important and they need to get done. But if your ass is in a wheelchair and you have impairment in 4 limbs, no one is gonna hire you for a fact a factory job, right? So they have to be within reason and making sure that they are finding the right jobs for someone that has their brain but doesn't have their body, if you will. But that's where we kind of struggle with vocational rehab and finding employment.
Yeah. Why do you think the disability community is good enough to volunteer in? Why do you think we're offered so many volunteer positions, but why do you think people think we're not good enough to get paid?
That's a great question. I've mulled over this question pretty much my entire life. I've thought of a few theories. For starters, I think that they think we're okay to volunteer because let's just say it doesn't go well. They're like, okay, well, it didn't go well, but we didn't lose any money because we didn't pay them. Whereas, let's say we were getting paid, then they would feel like, oh, it's too much risk for what if it doesn't go well? They don't think like, what if it actually goes very well? What if they're actually really good? What if they actually can get a promotion? They don't think of it in a positive way. They think like, oh, something is going to go wrong. And that's where it starts to go south for these and job seekers with disabilities.
Well, I mean, Phil, I agree with what you're saying, but honestly, any employer can take that attitude whether you have a disability or not. I mean, let's have someone volunteer and see what they do, and then if they don't work out, no skin off our back because we didn't pay them. I mean, they can have that attitude with people who don't have disabilities, but for some reason, they have that attitude with our community specifically, and it's very irritating.
Yes, but I take it more from a personal responsibility angle. A big reason why that still happens to the disabled community is because collectively we tolerate that type of behavior. So when collectively when we tolerate that behavior, people learn that that's okay to treat us like that.
When we accept just a volunteer position and a pat on the back because we want to get into the community and we want to be a part of it, that's why more volunteer positions are open to us, because we don't put our foot down enough in the disabled community and say, no, you will pay me for this.
That's correct. So there are people like you and I in the disabled community that do that, but to be honest, we're the minority within our disability community that do push back. You know,
Yes.
when somebody says that, oh yeah, you're welcome to come work for us, it's a volunteer position. Uh, we accept that, and so people learn that that's okay to do. They they open up more volunteer positions, and the problem keeps getting worse and worse. It keeps growing and growing. So the correct answer when someone says, hey, we have this position for you, it's a volunteer, is you have to push back. How much does it pay? It doesn't pay anything? Okay, well, I'm looking for paid work, so I'll be looking elsewhere. That's where it has to start. But disabled people, we accept any bullshit that somebody gives us, and then we
We
get surprised. And then we get surprised. You accept bullshit, and then you get surprised when you get a plate of diarrhea. You know, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Phil, I love you. I got to get out to Tempe and see you. That is exactly the truth. And I can hear some disability folks watching this and listening to this right now and say, yeah, but if we turn down the volunteer position, we look like the bad guy because we say we want to be involved in our community. And then here they are giving us a chance. And because it's volunteer, we won't take it. So we must not really want to be involved. What do you say to people who might say that about our community?
Well, it's not, well, what it is that people have to learn how to treat a person with a disability. So yes, in the beginning, when you turn down those volunteer positions, people will say you're an a-hole and this and that, you're ungrateful, yada yada, right? But over time, people build a higher respect for people with disabilities that learn to be assertive. And the assertiveness in the workforce, it also translates to expectations and better results in social life, like having friends, getting a date, having a wife. Because if you think about it, like I'm a straight man, so I date, or I'm interested in women. Think about it this way: if I can't stand up to my employer or to someone that's making me volunteer, then a woman's looking at me like, "Oh, he doesn't have a backbone. What happens when something goes wrong in our household and he doesn't stand up for our household, right?" So it has social
Wow, I
implications.
never thought about it like that. Yeah.
It has it has social implications beyond the workforce. It applies to every aspect of life. If you don't have a backbone in employment, then when do you ever have a backbone for other areas of life?
And what I would start encouraging people to do, and what I'm going to start doing myself, is if you get offered a volunteer position, ask them this question: if I'm good enough to volunteer, why am I not good enough for you to pay me? And if they can't answer that question, don't take the volunteer position. I wouldn't take the volunteer position anyway, like Phil said, you know, because people have told me for years, oh, take this volunteer position and then the paid ones will come. Well, honestly, I'm still waiting on the paid ones. I've taken a ton of volunteer positions.
Yeah, that theory has been proven false, that if you take volunteer positions, eventually you'll get a paid position. At least in disability, that's not true. What happens is, if we take volunteer positions, people learn that it's okay to only give disabled people volunteer positions, and then that paid position never comes. So
Yep.
when we take that volunteer position, all we're doing is teaching people that it's okay to do that to us. Not only is it okay to do it to us, but it's okay to do it to the next guy coming up behind me, the teenager or the 12-year-old, the guy that's 12-year-old right now, that's gonna need a job in about 8 or 10 years to support his family. Now he's gonna have the same problem that I have. But I see that my generation and your generation, Nick, we have the power to change employment outcomes for disability people.
We really do, and we're going to, which is another reason I recommend the book that I was a part of highly: Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of Those with Disabilities, because we each tell our story of what we've tried to bring to the community and how we've been shot down simply because of our disability. I mean, I've been told by 2 states and 3 counties that I'm unemployable because of my disability and that there's nothing that I can offer an employer. And that is simply not true. What it is I say this all the time: people with disabilities take time, and it depends on the person. But with a lot of cases, when it comes to people with disabilities, and Phil, you can jump in on this anytime, with a lot of people, when it comes to people with disabilities, you can't just throw us in a 2 week training for a 9 to 5 job and then say, okay, you got it. You got to look at the accommodations we need. You got to look at what we struggle with physically in um, our lives, and see what accommodations we need. And if you're not willing to do that as an employer, I'm telling you, you are missing out on some of the hardest working people that you will ever come across, because uh we will work our asses off even though we're sitting on them all the time.
Yes, I agree with that. I want to add a couple things though. One of the reasons why I feel disabled people might have trouble in employment is because, even I'm coming from the perspective of, I was born disabled, so I went through every phase of my life with my disability, and I know others that have been disabled as well. And the average disabled person does not have a good educational experience. Uh,
Nope.
Even, like, forget about work for a second. Just talk about education. We don't have an equal education experience. So when we don't have an equal education experience to our able-bodied counterparts, then it's no secret that we're going to have more difficulty with integration in the workforce. But then in terms of our loyalty in the workforce, once we get a paid job, for example, we're pretty much not leaving on our own terms, probably not going to quit a job because we're thinking like, "Oh, when's the next job? It's such a hell struggle to get this job. People don't really bounce around to different jobs in the disabled community because it's such a rocky road to say the least. So that's the loyalty piece. But really, the education that we receive or don't receive as children is where the shakiness in employment stems from.
Yeah, that really is true. I mean, did you go to integrated school, meaning you went to special ed a little bit and then you went to some classes, or did you go to full on classes all the time without special ed?
So what happened was when I was in preschool, so I think that's like ages 3 and 4.
Right.
I don't think preschool is mandatory in all states, but my parents chose to put me in preschool. I went to a disability preschool, and to call that school is a little bit laughable, but they call it school. And basically, it's a babysitting service with a therapy clinic. It had some benefits to be in that kind of school because, I had access to, the therapies, but the educational piece was lacking, to say the least. So then I went to regular school from kindergarten to 12th grade, with the able-bodied kids. And I can as soon as I got to kindergarten, I already knew I was behind because I wasn't doing what the other kids were doing in preschool. I was immediately behind. Like they could read better than me, and so on and so forth. And so I was in integrated classes where there was like a special education teacher most of the time. And then for math, I was pulled out separately to be in a smaller class with surprisingly with able I didn't know this, but apparently there are able-bodied people that can't do math either. So
But
we were in a small class, like 4 or 5 people, and they were trying to get us on par with math, but I don't think it ever fully happened for most people, but we did the best we could.
yeah, so I asked you that because I went to 2 years of kindergarten. I was in regular kindergarten classes. I went to private Christian school, and our church ran the Christian school. So for several years, they didn't actually have a special ed program. And so I went to 2 years of kindergarten. And then after that, I didn't go back to school until the sixth grade, when my church opened up a special ed program. And like you said, it was a glorified babysitting service. I was put in there with people, God bless them, I'm not criticizing them, but I was put in there with people who couldn't talk. I was put in there with people who were not physically disabled so much, but they were mentally disabled. So they had the brain of a 2 or 3 year old. And I was the only one in a wheelchair. And I'm telling you, I've seen so many episodes of Reading Rainbow. I hate the show. We would go on field trips, and one of my classmates' dads owned several Papa John's pizza chains through our area. So we would go there every year to make pizza. And I haven't made pizza on my own since I was in the 8th grade, maybe. And that really hasn't helped my skills. We would go on a field trip maybe like twice a month. I spent more time on field trips and watching Reading Rainbow and going on imaginary trips around the United States. And I went on imaginary trips, Phil. That was so much fun.
Yeah, I've used imagination myself to create realities that weren't available to me or not not offered to me for various reasons. I think that's a survival mechanism for being disabled, to be honest.
And I did color by number papers. And I remember going to the teachers and I'm like, why am I not doing like sixth grade math? They still had me doing 2 plus 2 is 4 when I was in the eighth grade. I mean, it was just, and nobody, a lot of schools now, they have IEPs. Our school didn't have that because we were a rinky dink private Christian school and we thought we were the best thing since, or I shouldn't say we, they thought they were the best thing since sliced bread and didn't need it. But yeah, I ended up just getting a certificate of completion, which basically said I was there, I ate up all the food, and that was it. And then I sat in my room for 10 years or a little longer, staring at the phone staring at the computer with a TV, phone, and computer, staring at four walls, which is another thing I talk about in my chapter, Breaking the Mold and Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities, which you can get on Kindle and in paperback on Amazon. And I encourage you to do so. But yeah, I mean, the these special ed programs are nothing but glorified babysitting services. Now, if you're out there and you're in a special ed program and you teach at a special ed program and you say, no, Nick, we're not all like that, I encourage you to come on the show and tell me about your special ed programs and tell me about the paces that you put your kids through. At the end of the time, they can have the best life possible. I would love to know that.
Yeah, but I also think that as a disabled student, like I was a bit, I guess people could say I was a bit rebellious, and I think that's actually in a disabled, as a disabled student, you have to be rebellious because if people are not giving you an education so much that they don't even invest in you enough to make sure you know how to read a paragraph, of reading material, then you have no choice but to be a harder person because like you're not gonna have a easy life being in a wheelchair and you can't read. You have to have something to counterbalance your problems. Not saying you in particular, Nick. I'm just saying anyone in this
Right.
situation.
Right. Well, I think a lot of issue two for me was my vision trouble. I do have octave atrophy, which is nerve damage in both of my eyes, which causes me to be legally blind. So I think my vision trouble happened with a lot of the reading. And plus, two, my memory is really good. So, we would write our own stories in school, and then by, a few hours that day, I had that story memorized and they would be, so I wasn't quote unquote reading it, I was quoting it. And so because I was able to memorize it so much. And so I think that was part of the problem too. But now I'm not able to read, like I'm not able to pick up a newspaper and read. I may be able to pick out a few words or a few lines from a newspaper article, but to read the whole thing without some assistance because of my vision and maybe because of lack of learning is virtually impossible now. So thank God that I'm in the area of technology, that I'm in the era of technology, because I don't know what I would do if I wasn't. So I'm very grateful for that. Okay, we just did dead air there. So we'll edit that part out. But so Phil, I mean, what are some of your other concerns with the disabled community that you see? I know that some of my main concern is I feel like the disabled people in our community have such a victim mentality. What say you about that?
I do think that there is, I could call it a victim mentality, but I also think that we're just not I know for sure we're not invested in. For example, I'm an adult, I'm 27. When I go to my doctors, they never ask me, what career do you have? Do you have any kids? Do you have a wife? They don't ask me the traditional questions they would ask another 27 man, a 27-year-old man that doesn't have a disability, right? So because that conversation is not had with, let's say, newly disabled or stroke patients or whatever it might be. They think it's not possible because that conversation is not had. Now I'm 27 and I've had my disability, all my life since I was a kid. So no, I don't need a doctor to have that conversation with me because I already have that internal will inside me to pursue those things on my own. But the reality is most people need that extra push, and that extra push is not existent. So your doctor, their first advice is to run to the Social Security office, and then that gets compounded by your mom, by your father, by your cousin, and everyone else, right? So then you never get any employment space after you become disabled, and then you just end up broke the rest of your life on top of already being disabled. And that's a summary of what happens and why shit hits the fan for disabled people after they become disabled.
Yeah. What do you think we can do as a disabled community, Phil, to get rid of the victim mentality?
Well, you and I, we're doing it. We're doing videos like this. You see, one of the reasons why I know that I'm an effective advocate is because some people don't like me, or some people they argue with me, and I like when people have that kind of reaction. I mean, not that I want everybody to dislike me, but part of being an impactful person is the possibility that someone won't agree with you or that they might feel, some kind of way about it, right? So I make people feel uncomfortable when they're okay being broke. I'm not okay being broke. I don't think anybody should be okay being broke,
Yeah. Yeah.
disabled, right? So part of that is, I guess people feel uncomfortable or whatever when I bring this topic up or when you bring this topic up, but it's very important because the government isn't going to save us. Maybe your family, they might help you financially if they're able to, but but
No.
but if they're able to, um, but other than that, you're up a creek without a paddle with a disability, and then as I mentioned before, then you're trying to get a woman. Like I'm a man trying to get a woman, right? And you're like, oh, I'm broke with no job. Why you can't get a woman? And like, you can't blame women for not wanting to date disabled men. We have to be more stable. That's just the reality of it.
I mean, and there's a lot of women that are out there that may look at us and say, hey, he gets free welfare. I have news for you that if we date you and put on our paperwork that you're our partner, you're our girlfriend, you're our wife, you know what you looked at as an asset. So the free gravy train that you thought you were going to get is going to now fall on you because we lose our asset. Because not our asset, we lose our benefits because the government looks at you, our wife, our partner, our boyfriend, what have you, as an asset. They basically say, now that Phil's married to a gorgeous girl, she's obviously a gravy train, so we're going to take what services he has away from him.
I agree that's an issue, but as a disabled person, I don't think that's an excuse to not pursue um, long-term romantic relationships if you desire that, because I believe that
Too.
I believe if you combine the pursuit of a good career with a career that pays money and the pursuit of a woman that you're interested in, and you combine the two, you can overpower a lot of difficulties. But where we struggle in disability is a lot of us don't have friends, a lot of us don't have romantic partners, a lot of us don't have jobs, a lot of us don't have, maybe we don't have family, or we do have family but they're financially not good themselves either, right? So we don't have these social supports to receive, but we also are not able to show our skills. Like for example, I believe I'll be a good husband to whatever woman wants to be with me, but I don't get to show my good husband qualities that often because it's difficult to find someone, right? So you have to be in a position to show off your abilities. That can apply in the workforce, in dating, in anything. We just need a chance to show what we can do. A lot of the time we don't even get in the door, if you will. And that's where things
Yeah.
become very difficult.
Well, I was saying in retrospect because there are a lot of women today that may think that, if they see us on welfare, they may think, well, I'll just go with him. He's got a consistent check and I've got welfare too. So we can combine our resources together and that'll be that. And the government doesn't really support that. So that's what I was, and I agree with you completely, Phil, that don't let the government stop you from, first of all, doing anything, but also finding your spouse, because a lot of people out there say that are disabled, I can't get married because then I'll lose my benefits. Well, that's why you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get as much money flowing in. I don't care what you do, whether it's podcasting like this or on TikTok like I do, which I don't get paid from podcasting yet. I haven't gotten paid from TikTok yet, but I'm working on it. But that's why you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and not rely on the government. And I want to say this, Phil, as well, is we have a lot of disabled people that are afraid of losing their benefits. Here's one of the things they say: if I work, I will lose my benefits. And I want to say, breaking news, that's the way it's supposed to go. You can't have your cake and eat it too. What do you say about that?
I agree. I mean, I don't want to be I mean, I don't want to be attached to the government. I'm a grown man. I want to have a family. I want to take care of my own children if I am fortunate to get that opportunity. I want to take care of a woman. I want to have a good life. I want to take care of them. I'm sure there's going to be challenges because just being disabled, I'm not naive. There's going to be maybe some issues, but I feel confident in my ability to control my issues. And yeah, I know that if you work or if you have money, you're gonna lose your benefits, but I'll be happy to not have those every 3 month meetings. Those are like hell on earth. And I would prefer not to have those. I prefer just to lose money paying out of pocket if that's what I have to do. But that also means that my job needs to pay pretty good money, 80,000, 100,000 a year. So I'm working on that aspect. And to be to have 80,000 or 100,000 a year income, it starts with the belief that you can have that.
Yes,
A lot of
yes.
people, a lot of disabled people are like, "Oh man, I just want a $15,000 is too much." Like, dude, you have to be realistic. Like, you cannot be dirt broke. Just being dirt broke, no matter what, in any scenario, is going to cause you more problems than good. I can assure you that.
Yeah, it really is. So, and my Bible says, "Money answereth all things," and so or it may say, "Money answereth many things." If I misquote the scripture, don't have a heart attack out there in internet land. Um, but Phil, you and I talked about here on this podcast today about you have to pull yourself out by your bootstraps, and I'm doing podcasting. I'm a public speaker. I have an event coming up this month, but it's a volunteer thing, and the reason I have is because I've spoken there many times before, and this will give me an opportunity to promote the book at the volunteer thing as well as my GoFundMe. And I just hired an agent, so that'll give me an opportunity to promote my agent there and get people to get me paid speaking gigs. So that's another reason why I'm taking it. But we've talked about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I've explained what I'm doing here a lot, the public speaking, the podcast. What are you doing to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and trying to get paid work? Talk about what you do and what your life's passion is.
Thank you for asking, Nick. So right now I'm doing a combination of different things. I do stand-up comedy. I'm a stand-up comic, and so that's been a good experience for me. I'm doing some projects related to that, but I'm not quite ready to talk about those just yet. In addition to that, I'm looking for a regular 9 to 5 job. Um, just like everyone else, paid work, not volunteer. And I have that in the works. And then in addition to that, I'm a part-time, what's called standardized patient, where a university local to me, they pay people to act out scripts and so that medical students can learn how to deal with patients with various different conditions. So I'm combining those three elements to try to get my income where I need it to be to make my life, I won't say easier because it's never going to be easier, but it'll be more comfortable or something like that.
Right. Awesome. What if you don't mind sharing with me in the audience, just in case a potential employer is watching, what type of 9 to 5 job is Phil looking for? What do you want to do?
Thank you for asking. So I previously came from pediatric urgent care and I was doing customer service. So I like to combine my customer service experiences with disability experiences, which is why I'm interested in customer service and disability education roles. There are roles like this out there, but as we discussed earlier, there's a lot of we have this, but it's a volunteer, right? So we need paid work. And so that remains an issue where it's not a difficult thing to find work. I mean, it can be difficult, but it's not that difficult. It's more so, okay, you found this work, but it doesn't pay money at all, right? So we have to work on that element.
Yeah. So you have an upcoming uh comedy show on June 13th that you're flying from Arizona to New Jersey for. Would you tell our audience about that?
Yes, June 13th, I'll be in the Jersey City Comedy Festival in Jersey City, New Jersey. It's at Art House Productions. We'll have a link, a poster, and the address in the comments, I'm sure. But it's a competition with 10 comics. And then if I advance, which I plan to advance, the final round is June 14th, the following day. 8 p.m. Saturday, 7 p.m. on Friday.
So Saturday is what? Is Saturday the
Friday is the 13th.
okay? Okay,
Uh
and then
Friday,
Saturday is the 4th.
yeah, 13th and 14th.
Okay, awesome. So if you're in the Jersey City area, we'll make sure there's something up on the screen promoting this. Go out and check out Phil. And if you haven't checked out his clips online, you should. He's absolutely hilarious. And if you're a comedy club, especially in Arizona, I know you do a lot of Arizona dates, but if you're a comedy club anywhere and you can accommodate Phil and what he needs and pay him. Don't ask him to come out there for free. Please do so because he's a terrific comic. I had to, let's just say I was watching one of your clips, Phil, and after I was done, I had to get personal care. Uh, because you made me laugh so hard. You're so hilarious. And one of these days we're gonna fly out. I'm gonna fly out to Tempe and see you, and we're gonna have a great time. We've already talked about it, and this is your second appearance, and I thank you so much for coming back. What are your final words of advice for our viewers and listeners today?
I would just say don't listen too much to the noise around you, the fear mongering about Medicaid. I'm sure there's going to be other things that get brought up, but if you're going to be disabled the rest of your life, then there's going to be lots of turmoil or uncertainty. Control what you can invest in yourself and make sure you're presenting yourself in the right ways. Focus on hygiene, focus on learning things, and bringing value to everyone around you. That could be for employment, dating, friendships, any element.
Yeah. Thank you for those words of advice, Phil. That's awesome. Stay right there. We're going to have a conversation as soon as the show wraps up. I want to thank Phil again for coming on the show for his second appearance, and he will be back for many appearances. I hope he's officially a friend of the show and a personal friend to me, and I love him so much. I want to remind you guys again to get the book Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. Go on Amazon or your Kindle device and download it, or you can get it in paperback. Like I've said throughout the show, we are working on an audio version, so I will make sure to keep you updated on that. If you want to email me to come on the show or have me come on your podcast or any future paid speaking engagements, please email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. And like I said earlier in the show, I hired an agent recently, so I will very shortly, within the next few weeks, have his information in the show notes as well, so that you can go through him to get me hired for these paid speaking engagements or the media blitz that we will be doing this summer starting very soon. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. And also remember, the GoFundMe link is also in my bio so that you can contribute $5, $10, or $20 to help keep this podcast coming to you every week, to also help with me getting a handicap accessible van and my other public speaking ventures. So please visit all that in my bio. This is the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.